This episode is sponsored by Smart Travel, a new podcast from NerdWallet. You know that one friend who always finds the best travel deals, picks the right cards, and somehow ends up in first class for the price of coach? How do they do that? Well, Smart Travel is like that friend, but in podcast form. They cover all things travel finance, like which travel cards earn their keep and which are just heavy, shiny metal, and planning group trips that won't ruin your budget or your friendships. So travel smarter and spend less. That's the key with help from NerdWallet. Follow Smart Travel wherever you get your podcasts. Armchair-Explorer is a part of the Voyescape podcast network. Check out all of their shows from around the world at voyescape.com.
Wolves have captured our imaginations in so many different ways. For some people, they represent just this otherworldly being. For other people, they are vicious, horrible creatures, the killers of livestock and people. And they're both myths. I mean, wolves are neither demon nor deity. And through our project, we wanted to show people the hidden side of wolves, the social side of wolves, for people to understand them better, because really and truly, they live their lives a lot like we do.
Hey guys, welcome to Armchair Explorer. My name's Aaron Miller. I'm a travel writer and your host. And today's adventure is something a little bit different. We're not going to go on a big expedition to some uncharted part of the world. There's no huge summits or wild seas. Instead, we're going to explore our relationship with one of the most iconic predators on Earth. This is the story of filmmakers Jim and Jamie Dutcher, who spent 6 years camped out in the Sawtooth Mountains of Idaho, living side by side with a pack of wolves. It's a beautiful story, it's inspiring, it's heartbreaking at times, and you will never look at your dog the same way again. Are you ready? Let's go. So just before we get going, guys, I want to give a second here to shout out Jim and Jamie's foundation. It's called livingwithwolves.org. That's the website. If this story resonates with you like it did with me, then go and check it out. Wolf conservation, wolf reintroduction is a big issue right now here in the States and elsewhere. And let me just say, there's a lot more people shouting against the wolf than standing by its side. So we need as many voices as possible. I also want to ask a favor of you guys personally, if I can. If you like this show, then a really awesome thing that you can do, it's super easy, is just hit that subscribe button. Because if you don't, the algorithm might forget about us, which would be very, very sad. And I personally hate it when a platform decides for me that I no longer want to see what episodes are coming out. You might not want to listen to all of them. That's totally cool. That's the way it goes. But I personally want to decide for myself. So if you hit that subscribe button, that follow button, make sure you keep following us and you won't miss a thing. And while you're at it, hey, if you want to earn extra bonus points, leave one of those cheeky 5-star reviews wherever you're listening to this. That would be especially brilliant. But don't worry about that right now, because the wolves are howling, the pack is gathering, and the adventure is about to begin.
Native Americans lived with wolves. The people at the time knew how to live on the land with predators. Wolves would follow the herds of buffalo and other ungulates, do their hunting, and there really wasn't this huge dispute. But within the United States, with this idea of manifest destiny, having to conquer the wild, untamed land, not only was there, a concerted effort to get rid of the Native Americans, but also to get rid of the predators. And the settling Americans or colonists started killing the bison, which then was the main food source for a lot of Native American tribes, and also a main food source for wolves and other predators. So it just became a sterilization of the land, that we as more superior humans are here to conquer this land.
Before the arrival of European settlers, it is estimated that between 250,000 and 500,000 wolves roam freely across the continental United States. Most Native American tribes viewed them with respect. The Blackfoot, Lakota, and Cheyenne claimed to have learned to hunt from wolves and believed that wolves live lives that parallel those of humans and thus represent another people that must be respected. But to the settlers, they were vermin.
And that attitude was, really brought from Europe to the United States. And this long-held belief that wolves are evil, they're a representation of the devil, that they just kill, all the livestock they can eat or all the ungulates that they can eat, and that they're these vicious creatures when really they aren't. They kill enough food to sustain themselves and, feed their pack. They'll make a kill and then they will sit around and digest for 7 days to 10 days, and then they'll go hunting again. But it really is the attitude of this land is mine. These ungulates, these deer and elk are mine, and I don't want the competition of a predator taking my deer and elk, that kind of thing.
By the 1970s, after decades of systematic eradication, there were fewer than 1,000 wolves in the United States. And though the official policy of extermination eventually ended, those deeply ingrained attitudes, the wolf is evil, as a bloodthirsty killer, still remained. And as long as that view persisted, Jim and Jamie realized wolves would never be safe. It was 1990, fledgling wolf reintroduction programs were just about to take hold, but they were coming up against enormous opposition. So they decided that the only way they would be a success, the only way the wolf could truly be safe, is if they could show people another side to them. But there is one problem. Filming wolves in the wild is incredibly difficult. If they wanted to show that more intimate side of the wolves, the way they played and lived together, their acts of compassion and care, they would need to get much closer access. Jim quotes Dr. Konrad Lorenz, who said, "The quickest way to learn the language of the species is to live with them." So that's exactly what they decided to do.
There was a woman up in Montana who got a hold of a pack of wolves that had been experimented on by the U.S. government. Testing was over. They were going to euthanize all the wolves, and so she took them. At the same time, she had seen a film that we had done on mountain lions and thought, if she gave us puppies, we might be able to help wolves like we did mountain lions.
Nursing a wolf puppy, it's not too bad when they don't have their teeth yet. They've got sharp little claws, and as soon as their teeth start developing, they are just vicious little balls of fluff. And we would be bottle feeding them. We'd gotten them just before they were opening their eyes at about 10 days. So we were the first living things that they saw. So we wanted them to imprint on us so that they would be comfortable with us. We never tried to treat them as pets. We didn't, give them names to call them or anything. So, we would bottle feed them, and we would have like baby bottles, and we would have to replace the rubber nipples like constantly because they would like just tear holes at them. I can't imagine how a mother wolf handles it. And we would all wear like multiple layers of clothing to just keep ourselves safe from the scratches and the chewing and the biting. And, we'd get through the feeding. I think it was about every 4 hours, 24 hours a day, round the clock. And then after they were fed, we would have like warm towels that were damp that we would kind of mimic a mother's tongue, licking them clean and dry. And then, they'd fall asleep, wake up, play, have to feed them again. So I think we probably pretty much did what a mother wolf would do, but it was an ordeal. It was fun. It was great. All of us, Jim, myself, and all the crew that helped take care of them, we had the scars to show it.
Two pups in particular from that first litter would become emblematic of the pack. They were nearly identical looking, light grey with sharp, piercing eyes and dark markings, but completely different in personality. One was feisty and brave and would go on to become the alpha of the pack. They named him Kamots, which means freedom in the Blackfoot language. The other was shy and timid and followed his brother rather than explore on his own. They named him Lakota, the Lakota Sioux word for friend. He would go on to become the Omega, the lowest ranking in the pack. But the pups bonded to Jim and Jamie, and they in turn bonded to the pups. It was time to introduce them to their new home.
Wolf Camp was in the Sawtooth Mountains. The closest road was 5-7 miles away. There was a little village there called Stanley, and a couple of hundred people. Stanley has a bumper sticker saying, "We don't have a town drunk. We all take turns." The people of Stanley weren't too sure about us. We needed a place that was remote. We needed a place that we could bring in chain link fencing. We needed a variety of vegetation. We had meadows, willows, aspen trees, lodgepole. It was huge. Our pack never tried to leave. They never paced the fence. They never tried to climb over the fence. And the reason was their family was there.
At first, they put their sleeping quarters just outside the enclosure, 2 sleeping tents and a round Mongolian yurt, which they used as their cook tent and living quarters. But eventually, they decided that wasn't close enough, so they moved inside the enclosure itself, now living fully with the wolves, in many ways, as part of the growing pack. And when you're part of the pack, and you wake up early in the morning and come outside and they see you for the first time, well, you know what it's like when you come back from work and your dog hasn't seen you all day and it gets really excited and jumps all over you and tries to kiss you on the face? Yeah, it was exactly like that.
I describe it as a warm, fluffy tornado with fangs. It's the best thing to do is just to get down to their level, and then they come up and they jump on you and lick your face and greet you. And especially because we had no electricity or running water or anything, we would have to leave camp every 10 days or so to charge our batteries, resupply. And so then when we would come back, they were just so excited and they'd all want to see us. And it was very interesting because if some of the mid-ranking or lower-ranking wolves came up to us and started greeting us before the alpha got to, all of a sudden you'd have this growling and snarling just right around your head as the alpha is might be over your shoulder, growling at a wolf behind you and then jumping after him saying, "Hey, it's not your turn." But you just kind of sat there because it really wasn't about you. It was about them. There was one time when one of the young wolves was licking my face and his canine went up my nose. And I was like, "Oh, okay, don't move." And it came right out. He wasn't trying to bite me or anything, just in the excitement of licking my face. But it was just an awesome, eerie, and very strangely wonderful experience.
As the seasons turned, the Sawtooth pack grew. Kamats and Lakota were joined by 3 other males, Amani, Motomo, and Matsi. And the more Jim and Jamie learned their language, the deeper their appreciation grew. But perhaps most poignant of all was the way they mourned.
The first year of the project, there was a black wolf that we called Mataki. It meant shadow in Blackfoot. She was the Omega, and she would often go off to be by herself just to get away from the pack and, not be picked on. Although they really loved her, and she would instigate play. But it was one time like this that she disappeared. And we found her body. She'd been killed and eviscerated. And we couldn't figure out what happened. And the wolves wouldn't do this. And it reminded me of what I had seen with the Cougar Project. The mountain lion, when she would kill anything, she would lick the fur away and open up the stomach. And the same thing was with this wolf. And what surprised us is how the pack reacted to her death. They were mourning her loss. They stopped playing for about 6 weeks. They stopped howling together. They were visibly saddened by the loss of their playmate. And I would go walking through this area weeks later, and sometimes the pack would just sort of follow and wonder what I was doing. And when I got to the area where the Mataki had been found, they would split up and ears would go back, even the alpha, tail down, sniffing the ground. You could see them visibly taking in what had happened there.
In the 6 years that Jim and Jamie lived with a sawtooth pack, there were a total of 4 litters. The first 2 were raised by them. The third was introduced to the pack as puppies, and the fourth happened all by itself.
Kamatz had the choice of 2 females, Shimuk and her sister Wyakin, and we just kind of thought it was going to be Wyakin, but no, he chose Shimuk, or I should say, she chose him. It's yes, the females do actually rule the roost. It's almost like a light bulb went off in her head, and she's like, "Oh my God, it's now or never!" And she pummeled Wyakin into the ground to get to Kamatz, and he sort of like didn't have a choice. So it's like, oh, okay, I guess you're it. So, watching them bond was really special. The way they spent time with each other, just snuggling with each other, grooming each other, and then as it came closer for Shimuk to give birth, and she was digging a den, the other wolves sort of got into the mood of this. She would look for a place and she'd kind of dig a little bit, test it out. And then all the other wolves were so excited that they'd like just be digging these random holes, just excitement. I mean, she wasn't going to use anyone that they had, but they just were just so happy. So she finally chose a spot under a fallen log and dug out her den there. And then one morning we got up and there were no wolves anywhere. And we're like, oh my gosh, this might be it. So, we quietly got ourselves together and went up way to the other end of the enclosure where the den was. And all the wolves are hanging around the entrance, just whining and stepping, on one foot and the other, just really excited. And she'd just given birth. So we waited a bit, and we knew that I was going to be the one to go in and kind of check on her, but we didn't know how it was going to go. So Jim was back a little ways with a camera, and I went up to the den and just sat there and waited. And Shimuk eventually came out, and I just sort of talked to her, just kind of building up confidence, like, it'll be okay. I had a little flashlight, let her look at that. And she's just like, okay, well, I'm going to go check on the pups now. And I kept thinking to myself, all right, well, the worst thing that's going to happen is I'm going to get bit on the rear end, but I'll have a great scar to talk about at the end. So she sort of moved away, and I took that as a sign that it was okay. And I shimmied myself down that tunnel about 6 feet, and it was really kind of interesting. It opened up into a much larger cavern, and the pups were not on the bottom. They were actually on a ledge that she had sort of dug out so as not to have them on the, if the ground had gotten damp. They were up on a ledge. I counted them and then wiggled my way back out, which was much harder than going in. And she was still there, just waiting for me. And she gave me a lick on the nose and just went back in. And it was a really special moment because she wouldn't let any of the wolves go in there, but she let me go in. So that was quite an honor.
3 pups were born to Kamatz and Shimuk, and when they finally emerged from the den, the entire pack was there to greet them.
When the pups came out, they all want to greet them. They all want to be around them.
They would prance around, almost dance on tiptoes if a wolf could do that. And there was a lot of vocalization, a lot of whining and yips and just excitement.
Some wolves took on the role as kind of puppy sitter, others as just like clownish uncle. They would pull his tail and his ears, and another one, took on the role of teacher. They all had a part to play because the pups just didn't belong to Kamats and Shamook. They belong to all of them.
That the pups are the glue that holds the pack together. If the pups are killed in springtime, and hunters actually go into dens and bring them out and stomp them to death, but if the pups are lost, the pack falls apart.
But as the pups grew and spring turned to summer and summer to fall, Jim and Jamie's time living with the pack was slowly coming to an end. It had been 6 years in total, but now their permit for the land was about to expire, and they needed to find the wolves a new home.
It was heartbreaking. It was incredibly heartbreaking. We always knew that we were going to have to find a permanent home for the wolves because we were on Forest Service land and we weren't going to be able to stay there forever. We couldn't just set the wolves free because they lost the one thing that they needed more than anything to survive in the wild, which was a fear of humans. The Nez Perce came to us and offered land, and so we built a similar situation on their land. But it was heartbreaking because how do you explain to them that, this is your new home now and this is where you're going to live? And even though we had trained people to go with them, we weren't going to be with them.
We moved them in transport crates that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service lent to us. And we put the crates in the meadow. Oh, gosh, it was awful to look at them, and try to get the wolves accustomed to them. But we had to tranquilize each wolf to move him into the crate and then let the tranquilizer wear off, and they all woke up. And we drove 11 hours north to the Nez Perce Reservation and took each crate. Puppies were all in one crate. The rest of them were all lined up, and we let the puppies out first and Lakota, the Omega, last. The rest of the pack focused on the puppies, and it was time to open the crate for Lakota, but he wouldn't come out. He was just too shy. He just hung back. And finally, his brother came back to him, and they spoke to each other in whines and yips, and finally the Kamats led his brother into this new home. He wouldn't leave his brother behind.
And though it was heartbreaking for Jim and Jamie, it was also a happy time. The wolves were welcomed into their new home with a ceremony of singing and drumming, for the wolf to the Nez Perce is sacred. And they took to their new home almost instantly, exploring, sniffing, running through the meadows at Kamot's heels until he climbed to a high rocky vantage point and began to howl, and his family joined him by his side. But unfortunately, most wolves are not so lucky. On April 14th, 2011, the United States Congress removed wolves from the endangered species list, the first time an animal had been removed from that list in 37 years, and not because they were no longer in danger. It was so they could be hunted again.
You can hunt, trap, poison wolves all year long, kill pups in dens, kill pregnant lactating females. It doesn't matter. It's become a real war against the wolf again, as we had in the early 20th century. We fight for them every day, but I can't say that it's not discouraging. It's hard because it's an animal in our ecosystem that we really need, and has become a political symbol of the scapegoat, the sacrificial lamb. So it's just really hard that it's all about politics and not about what this animal truly is and what this animal has to offer to so many people. But this age-old hatred and fear just will not let go.
That first year, Idaho Fish and Game sold 43,300 wolf hunting tags, and their meager population of 1,000 wolves was cut in half. The next year, 566 wolves turned to 336, and trapping was made legal and bounties put on their head. The reason given is that wolves kill livestock, but the statistics don't bear that out. In 2011, more than 6 million head of cattle lived in Montana, Wyoming, and Idaho. wolves killed 180 of them. That's 0.00003% of the total population. That's it. And beyond the ethics of it is the ecology. You cannot take the alpha predator out of the ecosystem without disastrous consequences. But on the flip side of that, for those places where the wolf had long since disappeared, reintroducing them is nothing short of miraculous.
We saw it when wolves were reintroduced into Yellowstone National Park. People would go to the park and they would see hundreds upon hundreds of elk and other animals, and they would look at that and think that that was normal. And with the reintroduction of wolves, we have now what was called the ecology of fear, in that, the wolves showed up and all of a sudden the elk, which had been decimating the riparian areas, they were eating down all the willows and aspens. I mean, there were trees, cottonwood trees, that were no younger than 70 years of age in the park because everything would get eaten down, but nobody noticed it. It was just like, business as usual. And then wolves came back and the elk were then kind of run up onto the hillsides where they could get a better vantage point, so away from the riparian areas. And over really a short period of time, things started to dramatically change. The coyote population, which had exploded in Yellowstone because they didn't have another predator to keep them in check, suddenly wolves were either chasing them away or killing them. And so that enabled the rodent population to go up. So that made it better for birds of prey. They had their food sources again. The willows and aspens and cottonwood trees were allowed to come back around the riparian areas, which made the water cooler, which allowed for a better population of trout and places for songbirds to live. It really was just becoming this new kind of Garden of Eden.
And more people came to see the wolves. 150,000 people would show up to see the wolves, and this brought revenue to the area. Now it's like $83 million a year is brought to the area because people are coming to the park just to see wolves.
Anyone who looks into the eye of a wolf is forever changed. That was Jim and Jamie's belief, that by showing the real lives of the wolves, we might change our attitudes towards them. And that has borne out to be true. You can't watch their film and not be struck by how similar this animal is to the dogs that share our home. Jamie howls and the pack come running to her. Kamot sits by Jim's side, puts a paw on his lap. Though Jim and Jamie could no longer live with them, they will always be part of the pack.
48 Hours for CBS contacted us and wanted us to go see the wolves. So we hadn't seen them for about a month or two. And we traveled up there and in a caravan of camera gear and everything, and with a correspondent. We could see the wolves were way out in the meadow. The snow was falling. And we called Kamot's name, and he raised up his head and took a double take and ran towards us, and all the other wolves came after us, and they jumped up on our shoulders, and it was like, where you been, what?
Yeah, they were howling around us and whining,
licking our faces,
and it was really emotional and wonderful reunion.
But it wouldn't be fair to end on a positive note, because Kamot and Lakota and the entire pack deserve the truth to be told. The fear and the hatred around wolves still remains and is still the louder voice. Reintroduction programs like Yellowstone, despite being a proven success, are far and few between. Hunting licenses are still issued in their thousands every year. So I'll leave you instead with this story, for there is perhaps no better example of the plight of the wolf and why they deserve to be saved.
Wolves live tragic lives, and one of the things we have done is travel to Alaska and Denali National Park and spend a lot of time with a wolf biologist up there. And He told us a story about a wolf pack or a couple. They had a couple litters and lost the first litter to a grizzly bear, and they were struggling. And the female alpha stepped into a trap just outside the park. And the male stuck with her and probably brought her food, kept her alive for quite some time until the trapper showed up a couple of weeks later. It's just a really emotional story. Finally, the trapper came and killed the wolf. The alpha male, with his young pups behind him, ran all the way back into the park where the den had been and started digging out the den, trying to make it ready for a litter that he would never father. Then he ran all the way back like 40 miles out of the park again to where he lost her. And the last time the biologist saw the wolf, he was howling where she had been.
At the end of their book, Jim and Jamie write this: "The insight of compassion was the gift that the Sawtooth Pack gave to us. Compassion had been an underlying theme in our films, and it is the single most important message about wolves that we can share. Wolves possess something beyond their more obvious attributes of beauty and strength and intelligence. These animals, who have been maligned for centuries and despised as the embodiment of all that is cowardly and savage and cruel, clearly care about one another. They show signs of what we believe are nothing less than empathy and compassion." No one knows exactly why wolves howl. To communicate, to stake out their home, to mourn their losses and welcome their young. They howl in friendship and in fear, to welcome the morning and the rising of the moon. In short, they howl because they're alive. And if we listen to it, if we truly hear it, maybe we too will learn to live with the wolves. Thank you, Jim and Jamie, for your time and for sharing your incredible story and the story of the Sawtooth Pack. If you're inspired to find out more about the work they do, please go to livingwithwolves.org. Lots of info up there about how you can help. Helping to spread the word, to dispel those myths is just a huge part of that battle too. And that's easy to do. Just tell a couple of people to check out this episode, or you can check out their film. It's up on YouTube, and the wolf pups are ridiculously cute. So that's about all we have time for today. Connect with me on social at armchair-explorer podcast on Instagram. Drop me a line if you like travel and adventure. We're going to get on well. And please remember to hit that follow button too, so you don't miss out on any of that good travel karma that is almost definitely maybe positively coming your way if you do. So until next time, keep listening for the howls of the wolf, whether that's in the wild or just in your heart. Because the more we look for wonder in the world, the more the wonder of the world becomes a part of who we are. Dare to be truly alive. Armchair Explorer is produced by Armchair Productions. Find our other shows at armchair-productions.com. My name's Aaron Miller. I write, present, and produce the show. Charles Tyree does the audio editing and sound design. Our theme music is by the artist Sweet Chat. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time.
Quick question. Do you want travel tips from people who have actually been there?
Our show is co-hosted by Tim Johnson, an award-winning travel journalist who's been to more than 145 countries around the world. And I'm David Brody, the other co-host who's been travel podcasting for 20 years while traveling to 50-plus countries around the world.
In about 10 or 20 minutes per show, we break down a destination with the kind of insight you usually only get from long guidebooks or hours of research.
So if you want expert advice, zero fluff, and travel inspiration that you can actually use, search for Travel in 10 wherever you listen to podcasts, or you can also find us at boyescape.com.
Hi, I'm Pauline Fromer, host of the Fromers Travel Podcast. We post new episodes weekly, detailing the kinds of money-saving tips and cultural insights that will make your trips richer without making you significantly poorer. We do so by interviewing real travel experts like TV host Samantha Brown, Frommer's authors from around the globe, and such public figures as Free Solo's Alex Honnold. It's a fun travel party. I hope you can join us.